quickly?
Well, before we talk about business, actually, this is 80 million people. This is the pivotal country in the Arab world. I mean, whatever we say, Egypt, everybody looks up to Egypt from the full 22 countries in the Arab world. So nobody, and you said about 25 people, I've seen many more people here, be it Arabs or non-Arabs, very concerned about what goes on. Not just because of business, because of basic humanity aspect. Nobody wants a vacuum, nobody wants a problem. Nobody wants any issues. Yes, people have a say, people want to come up and make their point, that's one thing, but then having riots, having basically vacuum coming through, and having a dirty landing, if I may call it, rather than having a very soft landing and solving some of these issues, nobody wants that. But when it comes to business, yes, I mean, I was asked, are we doing business? We're going to carry on doing business. This is 80 million people.
Because of the size of the market.
Well, number one, size of the market. You know, my stand at this point, you know, our people that we've been always talking about. If I don't work with my neighbor, I would never be safe in myself. So I have to work with my neighbor. We invest in the country. It's a beautiful country. There have been a lot of investments going in from us and other people. So I do not see any reason to stop. And we are not short-term investors. We're not there today and getting out tomorrow.
But businessmen like you, and the discussion here at Davos has always been the president would hand over to Gamal, his son. We don't know before the presidential election or after. The business community felt very comfortable with Gamal. Now it's a huge question mark. And as you said, not just for business, we're talking about the stability of the region here.
I think what's right is going to happen. They're going to do the right thing. They have no option but the right thing to happen. I'm talking about the people altogether, whether it's the elites or the people. Because if you leave it in a vacuum...
But Khalid, if I can interrupt you, this is like a cork that's been pushed down in a bottle for 30 years, and you had economic reforms for 7 years. You're coming back after those reforms. It's chipped away at poverty, but there's a lot of frustration on the ground.
Of course there is frustration on the ground. I mean, there is frustration on the ground. There has always been frustration on the ground. There's no harm to bring out that frustration, but not to really go all the way and create chaos, because Egypt is not Tunis. I mean, we're not going to have... I mean, Tunis, okay, thank God, it's finished. Didn't have any bloodshed.
We think it's finished.
We think it's finished. We don't want any bloodshed, and nobody wants bloodshed anywhere in the Arab world. So I think the issue of suppression or whatever people talk about, I've been involved in the competitiveness perspective. I mean, there's been more work done in Egypt than some of the other Arab countries around Egypt. So I think there are positives that we have to think about, and people have to really understand that there is a lot of, as you said, poverty line perspective, a lot of poor people, a lot of young people. Majority of the Arab world, 50% are below the age of 30.
So there is urgency.
Of course there is. There's an unemployment factor. There's been a lot of talk. The reforms now must move much, much faster than they did before. But we have to get it the right way rather than going into
chaos. Okay, Khalid Janahi, the co-chairman of the Arab Business Council. Khalid referred to the poverty numbers here. Egypt had poverty numbers of 40% before those reforms. It's down to 18% with people living on less than $2 a day. And Khalid mentioned this number before, but it's worth noting, Charles, $45 billion of foreign direct investment over the last 5 years. But the frustration has been, because of the high level of the youth unemployment and the salaries not going up, that it's not happening fast enough. And it's worth also noting that President Mubarak in the 1980s did start the reform process very early into his leadership period. And because of the unrest then, that stalled. And it reignited 7 years ago, and the last 5 years accelerated to get that sort of investment. Let's go back to London to Charles right now.
John, thank you very much indeed. John joining us there from the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos. And we're going to be updating you on the situation in Egypt, where the protests continue following Friday prayers. There are reports of huge numbers. We're going to take a break for now, but please stay with us.